He's charged in one of the most notorious cold case killings in modern American history. And this morning, the man known as Keefe D is breaking his silence from behind bars. Nearly 30 years ago, became one of the nation's most notorious unsolved murders.
Hey, Keefe, Metro Police, come over here.
Then in 2023, a breakthrough when prosecutors charged this man with ordering the hit, the only person arrested for Shakur's murder, who now tells ABC News authorities have the wrong man.
I'm innocent. I ain't killed nobody, never did ever kill nobody. They don't have no evidence against me. Came and put me in Las Vegas.
61-year-old Dwayne Keefe D. Davis says the night of the murder, September 7th.
It should never have taken this long. 28 years later, and people are still asking the same question. Who really set Tupac up? And who knew more than they ever said? Because the deeper you look into that night in Vegas, the uglier it gets. And the craziest part? A lot of people believe this was never random. They believe Tupac was lined up, watched, and left with no way out. And when you hear the full chain of events, you start to understand why so many fans still feel that way. Think about it. If Tupac had been sitting in a different seat that night, if just one small detail changed, maybe we are not here almost 3 decades later still saying, "Rest in peace, Tupac." That is what makes this story hurt even more. He was only in his 20s, still young, still evolving, still creating, still changing music, film, or culture, all at once. And yet somehow, everything ended in one night. But here is where it gets serious. When this case finally goes to trial, they are expected to pull in every witness they can. Security footage, casino footage, street cameras, testimony from people who were there. And remember, this happened in Las Vegas, around the MGM, Koval, Flamingo. Cameras were everywhere. So the question is not just what happened. The real question is, who saw it, who stayed quiet, and why? Because one thing is clear, what happened to Tupac was bigger than one moment. It was bigger than one fight, bigger than one night. One beef turned into another, and before long, the whole thing exploded into East Coast versus West Coast. That tension did not just change hip-hop. It destroyed lives, and Tupac was not just some headline. He had people who loved him, family, friends, fans around the world, people who still carry that pain to this day. So if you still rock with Tupac, stay with me, because this next part is where the story gets even darker. A lot of people have been saying for years that Tupac was set up, not just attacked, set up. And that is why fans have never let this go. They believe too many pieces fit too neatly. Too many people were around. Too many warnings were ignored. Too many names keep coming up again and again. Tupac was not just talented, he was rare. He could rap with fire. He could speak like a revolutionary. He had charisma, humor, presence. He could make a song like Dear Mama, then turn around and shake the whole industry with raw, fearless energy. That kind of person does not just make hits. That kind of person changes the room the second he walks into it. And maybe that was part of the problem. Because when someone becomes that powerful, that outspoken, that impossible to control, enemies start showing up from everywhere. Some were obvious, some were not. Now, according to the claims and rumors that have followed this case for years, investigators have looked closely at the people around Tupac that night, trying to understand how the situation escalated the way it did. And this is where names start making the story even more explosive. For a long time, people like Gene Deal spoke publicly and suggested that powerful figures in the industry may have had something to do with what happened. At the time, a lot of people brushed it off. Some believed him, some did not. But once those claims are out there, they do not disappear. They grow. And then more names get pulled into the conversation. Even Snoop Dogg has been mentioned in rumors tied to the tension around that era. Now, to be clear, allegations and rumors are not proof. But the reason people keep bringing his name up is because he and Tupac were close. They made music together. They performed together. They were part of the same movement, the same label, the same moment in hip-hop history. So when people hear that there may have been behind-the-scenes friction, it hits different. Because if there was tension there, what else was happening that the public never fully saw? And that is exactly why this story still keeps people glued in all these years later. Even Mike Tyson said he felt the energy that night. He saw the tension. He saw how charged everything felt around that fight. And that matters because sometimes the room tells the story before the crime ever happens. You can feel when something is off. You can feel when egos are clashing, when tempers are building, when people are caring more than they say out loud. And according to the people who were there, that night was full of that energy. Now imagine this, a young superstar at the center of fame, loyalty, street politics, label drama, and personal pride, all moving through one city, one weekend, one night. That is not just a dangerous mix. That is a powder keg. And then there is Jada Pinkett Smith. Every time Tupac's name comes up, people remember how deep that bond was. Those two were close in a way that went beyond headlines, beyond gossip, beyond the industry. And a lot of fans still say the same thing. If Tupac had lived, who knows what his life would have looked like, what he would have become, who he would have built a future with. That is what makes his loss feel unfinished. Not just because of what happened, but because of everything that never got the chance to happen. And just when people thought this case might stay buried forever, new pieces started surfacing again. That is when Keefe D became impossible to ignore. Because for years his name hovered over this case. Interviews, stories, books, public comments. He kept putting himself close to the center of it all, and eventually investigators circled back in a major way. Think about how wild that is. Nearly 3 decades later, Honor and the man many people believed knew the truth was suddenly back in the spotlight for the whole world to see. That alone made people ask a bigger question. If this much was being said publicly for years, why did it take so long for anything real to happen? That delay is exactly why so many fans still believe justice for Tupac was never treated with the urgency it deserved. And then you start hearing about witnesses, people at the scene, people who claimed they saw the car, people who claimed shots came from different positions, people who say Keefe D was there, people who say more than one person may have been involved. And once you hear that, the story changes again. Because now it is not just about one shooter. It becomes about the full network around that night. Who was present? Who knew the route? So who understood the movements? Who may have been waiting for the opportunity? That is where the setup theory gets even stronger in the minds of Tupac fans. Because this was not just any victim. This was Tupac, a global figure, a man whose every move was watched. So how does something like this happen unless somebody knew exactly how the pieces were lining up? And then there is the tension inside death row. That part of the story still fascinates people. Tupac, Snoop, Suge, those names were tied together in one of the most intense chapters in rap history. But behind the music and success, there were egos, pressure, distrust, and conflict building under the surface. Some accounts suggest Tupac did not want to get dragged into every issue happening around him. And some suggest Snoop was trying to protect himself in a situation that was getting more dangerous by the day. Some point to arguments, disagreements, and loyalty tests that created even more distance. And when you hear that, another question hits you. Was Tupac caught in a war that had already started moving around him? Because if he was, then that night in Vegas was not the beginning. It was the collision. There is even a story about confrontation, about blame, about fear, about people feeling like lives had been put in danger. And when all of that is bubbling in the background, it changes how you see everything that followed. Then the next morning came. News footage, yellow tape, shock everywhere, and suddenly the impossible was real. Tupac Shakur had been shot after leaving the Mike Tyson fight in Las Vegas. And while riding in the car with Suge Knight. That image alone became one of the most haunting moments in music history, because from that point on, nothing in hip-hop felt the same. Fans were grieving, artists were shaken, and everyone wanted answers. But answers did not come. Not fully, not cleanly, not in a way that gave people peace. Instead, the years filled up with rumors, accusations, interviews, whispered stories, and new names being pulled into one of the most painful mysteries in entertainment history. That is why, even now, every new detail matters. Every witness matters. Every contradiction matters. Every old interview suddenly matters again. And that is also why names like Diddy keep resurfacing in these conversations. For years, there have been allegations tying him to the broader theory around what happened to Tupac. Those claims have been discussed for a long time, but allegations are still allegations, and a courtroom is where facts have to be tested. Still, when names that big get attached to a case this famous, the public never looks away, because people do not just want gossip, they want the truth. And maybe that is the real reason Tupac's case refuses to die. Not just because he was a legend, but because deep down people know this story never felt finished. Not emotionally, not morally, and maybe not legally either. So as more evidence gets discussed, as more witnesses are examined, and as more people are forced to answer hard questions, one thing becomes impossible to deny. What happened to Tupac was not just a tragedy. It was a wound that never closed. A whole generation is still carrying it. And if more than one person really played a part in what happened that night, then what comes next could shake up everything people thought they knew. That is why this case still matters. That is why people are still watching. And that is why, all these years later, Tupac's name still carries pain, power, and unfinished business. Rest in peace to Tupac, and condolences to everyone who still feels that loss, like it happened yesterday. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Tupac was set up? Do you think the full truth is finally coming out? And if more names get exposed, are people really ready for what that could mean? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if Tupac's legacy still means something to you, and stay locked in, because this story may be far from over.